This intro is way too long. Hello everybody, it's Captain Coots back again for our Fallout 4 modding tutorial, doing the case study of Fallout 76 Mutations. Alright, and we're about to head into some difficult territory with the upcoming mutations. But before we get there, I'm basically going to be doing a mutation that's impossible to implement as stated in 76. And so I'm doing this so that we learn about compromising. Alright, there are some things that we just end up can't figuring out how to do, and we should probably learn how to pull the plug or make things work around where our limits are. Okay, so the mutation in question that this comes from is bird bones. All right, now bird bones is a pretty cool mutation. It gives you 4 agility, it gives you 40 action points, it reduces your falling speed, and all this costs is 4 strength. Okay, so now you might be wondering, after watching all the other previous videos, well, okay, I know how to fortify agility by 4. I know how to fortify action points by 40. I do those through the spell using established magic effects. I know how to reduce strength by 4, again, in that spell magic effects. I mean, we look right here, I've already built this ability right here. And we crack it open, fortify the action points, the agility, and reduce strength, easy peasy. Now, what we might not know how to do is how do you reduce the falling speed, right? I can't think of any other effect in game that reduces falling speed. So where I started to look was I just typed falling, whoops, into my filter here, and I got a whole bunch of stuff, okay? Now, there's a few things here that are promising, but really I want to look at this falling damage mod actor value, right? When you see an actor value like this, that's exactly pointing at what you want to do. This is where you want to start your investigation, okay? Right click on that, we go to use info. And what we can see here is that falling damage mod, okay, is altered by 3 or used by 3 major things. Okay, we got a magic effect, and we have a perk called mod falling damage, and then we have a perk called player perk. And so then the big thing is we need to figure out, okay, what the hell is going on? So if I'm going to right click on the magic effect, that's the one I'm going to do first. I'm going to go to use info, okay? And what I can see there is that there's an enchantment. Okay, so there's an enchantment that uses the armor falling effect, and it's called enchantment armor falling mod. Cool. Is that used? Oh, that's used by O mods. Now, what O mods are, those are object modifications. So these are all the different pieces of armor here that have reduced falling damage built into them. So I can see that that's used a lot in this context. Definitely not a mistake. Definitely not something that was attempted to be implemented and then got trashed. There's just way too many instances of it. All right, so that's cool. We've got a lead here. Okay, remember we're looking at an actor value. We have a magic effect now called armor falling effect that we know is used by an enchantment that we know is used by a bunch of object mods. So the next one here, I've got a perk. Well, this might be cool because it's right off the bat a mod falling damage perk. If I go to use info on this, it's used by some magic effect called mod lining cushioned magic effect. If I check that, use info, oh, it's used by an enchantment called mod lining cushioned enchantment. And if I look at the use info on that, it's blank. And so the fact of the matter is this perk right here, mod falling damage, is only used right here through this line. That doesn't seem very promising, right? And in fact, when I double click on this perk, what's really frustrating is it says right here, this is a generic perk used to hook the actor value into falling damage system, which is poorly worded. Make sure this perk is added to anyone whose actor value you mod to use with this perk. And if I look at it, it's even implemented wrong. You take a falling damage mod, you multiply it by 0.01, and then you add it to the current value. No, thank you. So what you do here is you take the current value, you multiply it by 1 plus some percentage. So falling damage mod needs to be a negative number. That's a weird way to implement it. That's not usually how we go. So this really strikes me as a dead end, that perk. So the last one is player perk. And if I check the use info on that, ooh, this is really promising because it's used by the player and then this player JJ01, okay? But this is, players used by everything. That's us. That's the player. So let's check out what that perk does. Okay. Now, if we look at this perk, it's hidden. Okay. Completely empty. But check this out. We already know it's automatically on the player. And we've got all these entry points. This is essentially, it's using almost every single entry point that you are going to want to use on a person. Oh, to modify your VATS hit chance, your buy prices, your sell prices, your sneak, detect, falling, blah, etc., 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 etc. Okay. If I look, here's my falling damage, and it's even implemented correctly. You take the falling damage mod and you multiply it by negative 0.01, and then you add that to 1 and multiply it by the value. So this is really interesting to me. So I can see now that falling damage, at least, has an entry point, and then we can edit it, or we can write something like a magic effect, or use the established magic effect from the armors to directly influence falling damage mod. Now, here's the thing where we need to make a design choice, okay? Now, first off, we can scrap that middle. That's just not being used at all. And what this comes down to is I need to make the decision on whether or not I'm going to use this magic effect and plug it into my spell and say, okay, it's going to work like the armor does. I'm not really quite sure what the numbers mean in the armor, or I can use an entry point like this and take it upon myself to make a decision. Now you might be asking, but wait a minute, all this was about falling speed. Yeah, I can't find it anywhere. Falling damage is going to be my next best thing. Sure, there's going to be some subtle differences in like, well, I can't just sort of glide out across. Big whoop, get marsupial and just freaking launch yourself off of buildings in South Boston. Whatever, will be great. Let's go back to Coots here. So the decision that I made was to go into this perk right here, and we're going to modify falling damage mod the falling damage, okay, and we're going to do a multiply value. Now, I put 0 in here for right now, just so that I could test it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the value here. A 1 means you take 100% of the falling damage, okay? A 0 means you take none of the falling damage. And the numbers greater than 1 means you take even extra falling damage for whatever reason, okay? So I want to make a decision on how much falling damage it's going to ignore. So if I put a 40 here, I'm going to say we're going to ignore 60% of falling damage. I think that's fair. All right. And so right here, falling from heights is slower. No. And you suffer only 40% of damage caused by falling. Great. And I'm going to press OK. Now I could test this, but I know it works. You should try to implement it, okay? This was my short little video about how to do bird bones and how to come with a compromise. Next time, we're going to be doing chameleon, and chameleon's going to be hard. So stay tuned. We're going to write a script. It's going to be good stuff. Stay tuned. What the fuck? It's going to be in another video.